Hi friend, David here from Learn Christmas Lighting, and today I want to take a look at something a little bit different than what we usually talk about, and it's one of the biggest questions that I get when it comes to people just researching and thinking about starting a Christmas light display. And so if that's you, watch this video and also hop over to learnchristmaslighting.com, where I've got the 3 things I wish I knew, before I created my very first Christmas light display. It's going to save you time, save you money, and save you frustration. And then watch today's video to learn about another really important topic, and that is, how in the world is it even legal to play recorded music as part of my Christmas light display? So if you've watched videos on YouTube, you stroll around town, you see these Christmas light displays, it's very obvious that people are putting these displays on their houses and they're playing recorded music, okay? In any other avenue, as you might be aware, whether it be a radio, in a store or a restaurant, etc., if you play someone else's recorded music, and just to begin here, I am not a lawyer, not a legal expert, more on that in a second, but if you play anybody else's recorded music, then you need to pay to them, or someone needs to pay to them effectively, because you played that song. You need to pay a small royalty to that person for using their music. Now, this is really reasonable, right? Because ultimately, we can't just grab, all the music we want in the world and just play it like it's free, because that would never fund the making of the music, right? Okay. And so how in the world, the question today is, how in the world am I able to do a musical Christmas light show on my house, or other people able to do this, and not get into legal hot water when they're using pre-recorded music, okay, by, artists that are on labels, etc. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, I'm not a lawyer. I just have some experience in this area. I have some knowledge, and I've done some research, and this video definitely isn't legal advice by any means, but it's just me wanting to share with you what I've researched, how the precedent is that I've seen, the research that I've seen out there, and how this applies to you in your display, and when, most importantly, you might be in a place where you might need to consider licensing your music, okay? So when it comes down to it, as mentioned before, if you're playing music on the radio, if you're playing it in a venue, in some sort of public place, the licensing for music changes, and this is especially relevant in today's world. You may know, and you may be aware that, say you open Spotify, like I was just listening to Spotify and I've got a paid account, and when I play a song in Spotify, that artist makes fractions of a penny for that play, okay? Now, and so you might think to yourself, okay, if I play a song on Spotify, they get paid, we're good, right? Well, we're good for personal use. Okay, so any music that you play today basically has licensing attached to it, what you can and cannot do with it. It's kind of like movies, right? You can't just go grab a DVD and go play it in a large public venue for free, right? You can't do that. It's against the licensing, okay? It's for personal and home use. And so when it comes to using something in our Christmas light display, we say, how in the world is this even legal, right? If we're playing it on an FM transmitter, etc., okay? Well, I'm not a lawyer, as I mentioned before, but there's a couple aspects to the laws, the precedents that I've looked into that I want to share you with here. The first is a concept known as fair use, okay? Fair use is a legal aspect that basically covers, as an example, anytime somebody uses a tiny clip of music, or a photo, or a screenshot, or an image, often in like a news story or something like that, okay? Or a piece of art. And what fair use basically says, and I'm summarizing this here, is that if you transform the original work, if you make it into something new, then you effectively can use it, okay? Now, there's a lot of murkiness there, and again, I'm not a lawyer. So there's fair use, okay? So you say to yourself, is what I'm doing transformative to the music, etc., etc.? Is it changing it? It generally isn't, from my perspective. Okay, so then the question becomes, how in the world is this even legal? Well, the general consensus is, as long as your Christmas light display is non-commercial, okay, it's not tied to a business or to profit in any way, you're generally good under the personal use license that you've bought that music under. Again, it's not legal advice. It's just what I've seen out there, right? I feel like there's a lot of disclaimers here. But, regardless, it's generally under that license, okay? So then the question becomes, how do you know if your display is purely personal or if you stepped into that commercial realm? Well, again, I've done a lot of research, and from what I've gathered, there's a few things that could push you into that commercial realm where you might have some issues, okay? The first is if you accept money from people, even if it's just to help further your display, okay? If you accept money personally for your display, at that point, you're pretty much commercial, right? That includes if you're operating, of course, a display where people are driving through it and they're paying a fee, they're coming to it, they're paying a fee, etc., etc., etc. In that case, you need the licensing to play that music, right? And the way to get that is generally to go through BMI, ASCAP, the writers' unions, or agencies rather, that regulate this stuff. And they generally have performance licenses that you can buy. And, how expensive that is and what that entails depends on what you're doing. And they kind of quote those out on a case-by-case basis, okay? The other way that you can get music licensed is by using a streaming service that plays that music. Now, that's kind of irrelevant here because there are ones, I believe, I forget what they're called, but there's Spotify is one. Other people have ones that are a commercial streaming service that pays out those commercial royalties to the artists, keeps you legal. But that doesn't work in a Christmas light display because we actually have to put the file into our display and it needs to run on its own, not through some third-party service. Okay, because you don't actually get the MP3s, you don't get the files to download in that case. So the basic gist being, if you stay out of non-commercial, you're good. If you accept donations for a third party, for some nonprofit, and you don't keep donations for yourself, you're generally good, okay? The gray area and where you definitely would probably need a license in order to operate your display is when you do enter into that commercial space. And, while I'm not a lawyer and I have done my research, as I've mentioned, the biggest key here is, okay, if we're doing a display for home use where we're not collecting any money, it's purely for the enjoyment of our neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. The reason probably why there's legal precedent of, nobody getting into trouble for that is there's really nothing to sue there, right? It's just a homeowner. So there's no profits, there's nothing for them to collect if they were to pursue these people, who are running this kind of show. But when it comes to if you're collecting money for yourself or as a donation for yourself or through ticket sales, okay, that's when it's time to look at licensing. That's when it's time to go ahead and say, okay, we need to get legal. We need to make sure these artists are getting paid for what they do, etc. Now, with that said, I am totally open if somebody from, the big writers agencies or whoever watches this and there is some kind of solution where, people could pay a small amount and get some sort of contract to play it on their house through the season. I think that would be very welcome. But as of right now, from what I see, there's really nothing out there and there's no precedent that anyone would have any trouble with the law or have any trouble, with these licensing bodies with running a home display that doesn't collect money. So do that and you'll generally be good. The last way you actually get commercial, just remembering this and looking at my notes quick, is if you take a sponsor for your display. You're taking money from a local business who's underwriting your display per se. They're saying, hey, this is the, blank blank insurance agency, the bank, whoever, and we're sponsoring this display. That gets you into the commercial realm. And if you put your display up on like a commercial building for, such and such insurance agent, such and such bank in your town, With those points, it becomes an advertising venture, and you're effectively probably also commercial there. So the long story short is, be careful out there. But if you're going ahead and you're doing a personal display where you're not accepting monetary gain, you're not taking tickets, donations, businesses aren't paying you to sponsor your display, etc., you're going to be good. Okay, the precedent is that you pay for the music, you download it from the service, and you're effectively, using your personal use FM transmitter like having a boombox in your front yard, right? That you crank up and some people around here. Is it, a rock solid, foolproof legal argument? Probably not, though I'm not a lawyer. But at the end of the day, again, generally, there are really no cases of anything going into trouble. If you are looking for more information, there are a couple of resources out there. There's actually for commercial use, there is, I believe it's Animated Lighting. There is a company that has a guide about commercial use and the precedence of this. It goes into much more detail than I was able to go into here, and we'll make sure to link to that below. And again, if you're starting your first display and it's just going to be a personal display at your home, this really isn't something to concern you. But what is grabbing my free guide about the 3 things that you need to know before you begin your first Christmas light display. You can get it here over at learnchristmaslighting.com. Thank you so much and have a great day. We'll see you in our next video. Thanks.